The hero's journey. In narratology and comparative mythology, the hero's journey is the common template of stories that involve a hero who goes on an adventure, becomes victorious in a decisive crisis, and returns home changed or transformed. In Jujutsu Kaisen, our main protagonist is Yuji Itadori, the hero that will face evil and rise above his flaws in order to make his goal a reality. Beginning with the call to adventure, the hero's journey is usually followed by some sort of supernatural aid, and after a short passage of time, we are introduced to what are known in the journey as threshold guardians. Opposing forces, whether permanent or temporary, that force the protagonist to face their impurities and realize change is necessary. As they travel the way of finding that threshold, our main character will meet multiple helpers along their journey. Some mere allies, while others may be influential mentors that help the hero shape their transformation. Challenges and temptations also meet the hero on his journey, prompting more growth and a solid formation of principles. However, if you'll notice, the next step in the journey, the one we'll be discussing today, is the step known as the Abyss or the Revelation, otherwise known as the stages of Death and Rebirth. Some may conflate the two, but rest assured, destruction always comes before creation. Throughout the Shibuya Incident, the trials and tribulations for all of our characters have reached a level none of them have ever quite imagined, especially Itadori, who has continued to push past every obstacle that has been put in front of him since he arrived on the scene. And now that Gojo Satoru has been sealed inside a prison realm, the stakes have been raised higher than ever before. And unfortunately, regardless how tenacious they may be, none of our main cast is ready to face such danger. Not yet, at least.
いいか弟たちよ。エソはケチズのために、ケチズは俺のために、俺はエソのためにいる。
With the race on to discover where Kenjaku and Prison Realm is hiding, Yuji has been blitzing through the underground of Shibuya in order to reach the lower levels. As he continues to descend, he ends up face to face with the head brother of the death paintings, Choso, who specifically, unbeknownst to Yuji, has allied himself with the disaster curses for no other reason but to meet with him, finding the person responsible for his brother's deaths and making them pay for what they've done. You could call it convenience, but with how detrimental this meeting ends up being to all of the major events going forward, some wouldn't hesitate and call it fate, and I actually think there's a lot more merit behind that sentiment than the story lets on, but we can focus and talk about that more later. Without wasting any time, Choso takes the opportunity and clashes with Itadori immediately, firing off the Kamo clan's secret technique, Piercing Blood. It's interesting to note here, Gege takes the time to explain the usage of blood manipulation, and I'm going to follow his lead and vastly overanalyze this. Blood manipulation is almost quintessential to Choso's character. As a cursed spirit slash human amalgamation with no real purpose in life, Choso could only rely on one constant in life, and that was his relationship with his brothers. Despite Kechizu and Eso being the only two fully manifested, there are 7 other brothers among the death paintings as well. And to Choso, his brothers come before everything else. At least they did, before they were stolen from him. It is not a coincidence that Choso, oldest of 10 siblings, would use blood as his weapon, literally using his flesh and blood, weaponizing the bonds that kept him and his brothers connected. Choso is able to signal his love with every attack he throws being in their name, and thanks to his cursed spirit status, that blood is endless, just like their bond. A strong enough bond that Piercing Blood is almost able to puncture through both of Yuji's arms with no problem at all. And once again, because Choso's blood is infinite, he can fire this attack repeatedly with little to no cooldown. That first attack had done so much damage, Yuji's cursed energy flow was actually disrupted, resulting in a divergent fist actually leaking out of Itadori's counterattack. The rise in tension and sudden start of the conflict clearly caught Yuji off guard enough for his focus to falter. Before continuing, Choso asks for his brother's last words, and Yuji, reflecting on the blood he has on his hands, can't help but empathize with his enemy's loss. Each of them mourn the deaths of the departed in their own ways. With nothing else to be said, they both ready themselves, knowing there is no other way to settle this. As the two go back and forth, it's obvious that Yuji is the one at the disadvantage here. With Yuji's biggest weakness being long-ranged fights, Choso is able to take full control of the battle by keeping his distance and fighting from afar. With Piercing Blood's speed and attack power, no matter what move he makes, Itadori is risking critical damage. Assuming his best plan is to find a way to get close, Yuji's main objective never truly changes. Unfortunately for Yuji, due to blood manipulation's versatility, the amount of variation between Choso's attacks allow him to have adequate defense at any range. His mid-range combat is provided dangerous offensive potential with the buckshot-like skill Supernova, and close quarters is supplemented by his ability to condense and harden blood in daggers or sharp projectiles. Thankfully though, Yuji's powerful offense also comes with a highly durable defense. Even after being dealt intensive damage, the kid still finds the willpower to throw a kick at Choso with an impaled foot. Try as he might, Yuji's resistance continues to be futile. The disadvantage he faces against Choso's technique is simply unavoidable. No matter what angle Yuji comes at, Choso has an answer in his arsenal. Choso is even able to fake out a clever martial artist like Yuji by taking advantage of his smaller understanding of the basics of the technique and gain back any lost ground as soon as Yuji reaches for it. He is also able to encroach on Yuji's home turf with plain old hand-to-hand combat, as blood manipulation also provides Choso with flowing red scale, allowing him to meet Itadori halfway, pressing Yuji back against the wall and resetting the fight back to neutral status. For someone like Yuji, who is constantly praised for his ability to adapt in tough situations, as well as his high-risk, high-reward approach to opening up his opponent's vital spots, it's interesting to see him face Choso, the opposite side of a similar coin. Adaptable is the perfect word to use when describing Choso and his blood manipulation. While Yuji has consistently succeeded in finding win conditions to unlikely situations, Choso outclasses this versatility by being able to change his blood usage on a dime and fit any situation at hand. It's no secret that the mark on Choso's nose changes shape as his blood manipulation switches form, fitting himself into the shoes that he feels are necessary to avenge his brother's death. Being a murderer wasn't exactly on Choso's bucket list, but he'll do what he needs to do to achieve his goals. Ironic. Two entirely separate people, drawn together by such unlikely circumstances. A timeline of events that somehow resulted in a meeting destined by fate, drawn together by nothing but gravity. To take a break for a minute and use a reference in a way that I think hits my point home a bit more, I'd like to introduce you to the concept of gravity. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, characters fight using a power called stands. Some people are born with stands, others end up with them by coming into contact with a foreign object, such as a golden arrow. Regardless of how these stand users are created, they are naturally drawn to each other from the second they become a user and so forth. Whether through bizarre circumstances or unlikely series of events, for whatever reason, stand users always find themselves in similar locations, always at odds with one another, resulting in constant conflict and battle across the world without fail. Why this happens exactly has constantly been theorized by higher level users, some eventually settling on the hypothesis that these meetings are a condition of fate or destiny. Another name for this phenomena is gravity. The concept of gravity claims there is a predetermined course of events, a quirk of fate one could call it, invisible strings that tie stand users together and cause these destined meetings to occur. Every action that a person takes, even before becoming a stand user, is laid out before them to get them to their predestined locations, whether that destination be untimely death, glorious friendship, or divine purpose. Itadori Yuji, clearly having ties to a devious past he is unaware of, and Choso, blindly seeking vengeance in the absence of true purpose, somehow these two characters find themselves at odds despite all of the similarities that they share. Because of this, the universe deemed it necessary to tie these two together and present them both with a roadblock that would force them to take on change and forge a new path completely off the road from where they were both heading originally. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves now. Before rebirth comes death. At this point in the battle, Itadori is beginning to realize he stands no chance against Choso and his blood. Coincidentally, Mekamaru is there to bail Yuji out, ensuring he doesn't have to take that loss just yet. As the course of fate should dictate, the two sorcerers are able to fool Choso into setting off the fire alarms in the bathroom with their plan, creating an environment where the blood outside of Choso's body has become too thin to be controlled. Now, with Choso's large advantage diminished, the battle levels, and it becomes largely equal ground between the two fighters. Despite Choso's massive handicap in the beginning of the battle, without blood manipulation, Itadori clearly outclasses the cursed spirit in hand-to-hand combat. Even so, Choso is prepared to take on the sorcerer with everything that he has. Invigorated by the thought of avenging his brothers, his nose mark again changes, showing how he again has morphed his fighting style to better match Itadori. But even now that Yuji's able to make a decent press on Choso, the blood manipulator still had one trick up his sleeve. And just like that, in the matter of seconds, Itadori Yuji had any chance of ever enjoying alcohol ripped away from him entirely. Panicking, Thoughts race rapidly through Itadori's head as death flashes before his eyes. A clear nod to the cursed Wu mark, Yuji's death seems imminent and all of his regrets are about to surface. However, this time, Yuji's resolve remains solid. Unlike before, Itadori has grown effectively into his role as a sorcerer. With nothing but trust in his friends and faith in their goal, Yuji's completely comfortable being only a mere stepping stone for his allies. As long as he dies making a difference for those who come after, he need not worry about his own life. Itadori turns his fear of dying into cursed energy and focuses his mind on one single thought: fight. Fight and take down the enemy in front of you, even if it means the end. Unfortunately, this divine revelation of Itadori's means nothing if he doesn't have the strength to match it. No matter how much he'd like to think so, fate needs its epiphany to be on hold for now. While just barely grazing the surface of his rebirth, Itadori must first suffer death at the hands of his older brother Choso. For this loss alone will be the catalyst that shifts the momentum throughout Shibuya and all of the future events to come. As per the law of gravity, the conflict between Itadori and Choso will and must branch off into multiple different paths. Choso, before murdering his younger brother in cold blood, is suddenly awakened to his inner connection with Itadori, creating a living nightmare for the cursed spirit and resulting in his future alliance with the main cast. In typical Jobro fashion, I might add, which causes Yuji to be left alone and gives Jogo the chance to force feed Itadori 10 more fingers of Sukuna, in turn setting off Shibuya's destruction and all the other nails in the coffin that solidify Itadori's rebirth as a full-fledged Jujutsu sorcerer and hero. In order to exorcise his mortal enemy Mahito, the hero must be put through a tragic death, a necessary downfall that will cause him to reach heights never before possible. In order to be reborn, he must find renewed love and friendship in the brother he never knew. And in order to save his friends, he must gain the principle and comfortability in his role that will allow him to conquer evil and continue to mold a resolve that will carry Itadori in the future wars to come. At least this time, he won't have to do it alone. Thank you guys so much for watching this analysis video. I appreciate you. Hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye.